Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is brought to you by Chiro HD, Evo Creative Media, 100% Chiropractic, Chiro Health USA, Imaging Services, Chiro Moguls, New Patients in a Box, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, and the IFCO. You can benefit from our full list of sponsors by visiting our sponsor page at chirohustle.com/sponsors. Links in the description. Now let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 605 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Gabe Roberts. And if you want to learn how to only see the best in yourself, listen to the full episode. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Today we have Gabe Roberts. It's episode 605. Our big why do we do what we do? Freedom of speech is more important to me than almost anybody you'll ever meet. So that's why we do our show. We know what it's like to be censored and shadow banned, and it's not cool. We also believe in medical freedom and family health freedom. They're not the same things. If you want to learn more about that, go find a chiropractor. They're going to be your advocate for family health freedom and medical freedom. We support the sacred trust. We protect it. If you don't know what that means, go to our show notes and check it out. BJ Palmer's last words. He was the developer of this beautiful profession of chiropractic. We support subluxation-centered, subluxation-based chiropractic. They're taking this lexicon out of the colleges, so we have to stand in the gap and promote and protect the language of this profession. The languaging is so important. And one of the things that we also believe in and protect is the sacred trust, which leads into innate intelligence and universal intelligence. Universal intelligence is when man or woman, the physical is adjusted, it connects the physical to the energetic. And we believe that when somebody gets adjusted by a chiropractor, it connects man or woman, the physical, to man or woman, the spiritual. And with that, this is episode 605 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Gabe Roberts, welcome.
Hey, thank you, James. Glad to be here today.
You know, this is a big energetic conversation. We've talked for about 30 minutes off camera just about the power of chiropractic, the power of energetic people. Like, so many times people come into the chiropractic arena because everything in the medical profession failed them, or, you know, they grew up in a chiropractic family, you know, but very seldom do people ever come into chiropractic first. And I know that what are your a storyline for us today is you came into chiropractic later in life as a practitioner for a decade now. So you had previous careers. So what led you to the point where you wanted to move into the world of chiropractic?
I would say I was looking for an answer for the pain that I was carrying. And the pain was not so much a physical pain, but it was a deep, untouched emotional pain that all my previous endeavors had either masked or just temporarily kind of soothed. For one thing, I came into it later, but throughout my life, I had many, I would say many addictions to different drugs and things like that were all for trying to find an answer to this pain. And even though I was trying to do my best on the surface, you know, I ran a supplement store. I sold a lot of nutritional content to people. I was a very dedicated personal trainer. And this is, of course, after years of being in the Marine Corps. And that's where my whole journey on fitness and peak human performance kind of started. And once I got out of the Marine Corps and I started doing this endeavor with nutrition and personal training and gyms and fitness and things like that, that pain was still there. And I found myself, even though I was at the gym during the day and during the afternoon, I was selling stuff to people and telling them how to eat better. By the evening time came, I was usually smoking. I usually had a joint in my mouth, just trying to get to the point where I could sleep. So uh, once I started kind of diving into this, I ran into an old friend who was a chiropractor, and I was really interested in some higher level learning. At the time, I was an EMT and I was also a paramedic while running this supplement store at the same time. And when I realized that chiropractic had an emphasis on using the body's own healing ability and putting an emphasis on that, of course, I was in, and that's where I went all in to step into this profession.
Yeah, I was telling you before we started the interview today that I go out and I get a bunch of new chiropractic patients for chiropractic clinics. And the the semantics of it, they could be practice members, they could be clients, they could be patients, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
But I always tell people very simple chiropractic philosophy. The body needs nothing extra in it. It simply needs no interference. Once we clear the interference, the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism. And that's like the baseline that people get from me. And right away, when you share that like big idea with somebody like you got, it either really, really like makes you take a deeper dive or you just want to get adjusted because you're like, well, I don't want to take these drugs. I don't want to. One of my favorite interviews I ever did was Les Brown on Chiro
Hmm.
Hustle. And he's like, the reason I like chiropractic because it doesn't cut it out, drug it out, or burn it out. It adjusts it out.
Right.
And, you know, chiropractic baseline, once again, helps with thoughts, traumas, toxins, physical, chemical, and emotional stresses. And when you start talking like that to somebody, they've never heard anybody ever in their entire lifetime mention anything to make that much sense to them.
Exactly. And the trauma thought toxins um, is, what chiropractors hear. It's what I remember hearing. And that made me start to kind of look at each one of those and apply it to practice. In my own practice in Kansas City, my wife and I ran. We had a huge emphasis on energetic medicine. Um, that's where I was a best practitioner, bioenergetic synchronization technique, and used a number of other energetic based techniques um, to approach healing. And of course, this included working with detoxification as well, getting a person's detox centers operating and making sure that they weren't having any kind of stealth infection present, so more advanced lab testing, all of that, along with um, working with the alignment of the body. And what I found over time was the thoughts, to a large part, was the one that was um, neglected. The thoughts was the one that um, despite all the energetic medicine, I did acupuncture, quantum integration, best level 3, um, body code, emotional freedom technique, emotional clearing techniques with people, thinking that I was working on that thought aspect. And it dawned on me one day that I wasn't going near deep enough. And what I found was that it was the thought that was the causative behind it.
Well, if we don't figure that out, then people constantly drift, they constantly sedate, and they never hit their peak potentials.
That's exactly right. Thought. See, we're spiritual beings, and we live in physical bodies, and we have an intellectual part of us, a mental emotional part of us, and it's the mental emotional part that's the causative. See, emotions are extremely powerful. They can build and they can destroy when we aren't taught, and we're not taught. A large part of our education and why people come to chiropractors too is they're looking for something different. They're like, okay, something about this is no longer right. And what we're seeing is a collapsing, a collapsing of a system that's built on a false premises that we are nothing more than a physical being. We're nothing more than a flesh, mechanical, materialistic type view. And of course, this has plagued there's 16,500 higher educational universities across the globe. Less than 50 of them investigate things like thought, like mind power, like things like telekinesis and telepathy. Although some viewers might think, oh, that stuff's not real, actually, scientifically verifiable, telepathic is actually 5 times more scientifically validated than an aspirin for preventing a heart attack. Now, that's the data. That's what real science, inquiry, investigation has concluded. But when you look at 16,500 universities and less than 50 of them look at this other side, it's understandable that a majority of the thinking of people today comes from this mechanistic model. Rene Descartes, he's the one that said, I think, therefore I am. It started kind of with him, but it's been around as long as Plato, of the mind and the material are different. Mind and body are different. Mind and thoughts are different than the physical matter. And that's been the reigning dominant view for centuries. And it started to change. Actually, a huge foundational shift occurred in around 1927 during the Slovian meetings when you had Albert Einstein, Max Planck, the father of quantum physics, Marie Curie, um, John Wheeler, 18 of some of the most brilliant minds in the world in an unprecedented meeting got together and they said, how does the universe work? Let's look closer at these atoms that make up everything. And up until then, atoms were interpreted as physical blocks. Atoms were predictable. Atoms were solid, like a machine. And when you have this kind of mindset of predictable, solid, machine like, an underlying mindset within that is, hey, your actions don't mean anything. Your genetics are determine everything. There's nothing you can do. It's all determined, it's all predictable. And that gives an underlying mindset in a majority of people, well, I can't do anything about it, so why not just take this to kind of ease it? Why not take the drug? Why not, see what this doctor has to recommend because, you know, they're the experts. Where this shift with these individuals realized that when they dug closer to the atom, um, they realized that this behavior of light is responsive to thought. And light is what makes everything up. If you get close enough, E equals mc squared, that famous equation by Einstein. E equals mc squared means energy is not just something that does work. It's not just a capacity to do work like we're told. Energy and mass times the speed of light squared are one and the same. And that light, speed of light, is actually responsive to thought. And this completely shifted how we thought. It went from a cause effect world to where we are actually causing an effect on everything we do. And of course, that is the most dominant branch of science today, known as quantum physics. It single-handedly has shown that Newtonian physics is flawed, and Newtonian physics is the dominant view, the default mechanistic view. And that's why a lot of times people come in and they feel like they are, not to put any blame on them, it's just the way they've been conditioned, that they're victims and why bother doing anything. And they go to doctors, they look for some kind of answer. And in the end, they realize that they're just taking one drug after another, after another, after another. And they realize, hey, there's got to be something more to this. And so they start to kind of venture out of that conventional way of thinking.
Well, there's so many things that I know that I want to talk to you about. I was just reading over your bio earlier, and I was like mentioning to you like all the things that I don't know that you do, that you've either founded or that you practice. And I thought it was fascinating. One of the things you told me that like all of the people that you support are through Zoom. But I'm just going to tie a couple things together before we move to the next topic. There's an old saying that if all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail. And it depends on what toolkit that you're working out of is how effective you can be when you fix something. And I think Einstein said if you expected a fish to climb a tree, you would think it was stupid too. And something, and maybe I'm generalizing that statement, but that's what we think with practitioners. If we think that somebody that's trained in pharmacology and sickness and disease, and they're supported by a pharmacological company, you think that they would treat something with going to the mind first or going to the spine first, like a chiropractor. And I was at a seminar a couple 2 months ago, and I heard this platform speaker talking, and I was like, yeah, it would be like, this was what he was talking about was like how to like make people better faster. And I was like, yeah, it's like taking somebody that has like a virus and treat it with an antibiotic. You can't treat a bacterial infection or a viral infection with a bacterial infection type of, you know,
Approach, right?
approach. And I think a lot of people, they aren't looking to the right toolkit to how to take care of people. And they're not doing enough time with people in order to understand who they are and what their breakdown is. And if I said, hey, Gabe, I need you to go find the light switch on the wall, you would go directly to the white light switch. If I'm like, hey, where would be the obvious place that you'd go look for a spare tire? You would go right to the where you would get a spare tire. Or if I'm like, hey, where's that thing that hangs in the bathroom? What's it called above the sink? Most people would probably say it's a medicine cabinet. So when we create an obvious approach to finding things and understanding things, it's much different than if we have to go and investigate where the parts of somebody's bodies are where we don't know how to find them. And I think that that's the approach that I'm really looking forward to talking to you about, which was, the holographic manipulation therapy. I can barely even say it. Something that you've helped co-found, and the the clinical hypnotherapist and the NLP stuff that you do. Like, there's just so many layers to what you do as a practitioner, coming from EMT world, coming from marine life, going into chiropractic, and now here we are today. And I think that there's just so much to discuss. And I don't even know if I'll get a chance to talk to you about like what advice you would give to a young chiropractic student on how to practice and become successful. But I think we should go back to where we just were, like coming from this approach and understanding that people are sicker than they've ever been before, and the average person is not healthy. And we have 50% of people that are obese, and we have 50% of people that are like, critically ill. What can we do to improve this, man?
I think that's a big question.
It is.
One of the most important factors that we have to do is we have to inspire and empower people, because just one thing you mentioned, obesity, right?
Yeah, it's a problem.
Vincent Felitti. Have you ever heard of Dr. Vincent Felitti?
I don't know, Vincent.
He was the San Diego internist. That's a thinker and a real observer, a medical doctor, brilliant guy. He's the one that's responsible for originating what are called the ACEs scores, Adverse Childhood Experience scores. And he had an obesity clinic, and he found that with rigorous diet and exercise that he could make people lose tremendous amounts of weight. Problem solved, right? Well, what he could not do was keep the weight off of them. Now, in my own practice, I found a very similar pattern. At one point, Tiffany and I were working with a tremendous amount of diabetics type 2. And we found through lifestyle interventions, detoxing the liver, having them do some exercise, walking, breathing exercises to kind of regulate their nervous system, doing all these things, we had a tremendous impact in their lives. We reversed the diabetes on paperwork and their lifestyle. They felt better. What we couldn't do was keep them from returning back to a diabetic in some other way. And this is what really began to trouble us. What Dr. Vlieti found was the same thing that came to a conclusion of was Dr. Vlieti sat down with these patients of his and asked them questions. And one of them said this, don't you get it? We're stuffing away our pain. And so what it comes down to, if we're going to if we're going to inspire people, first off, we have to show them how powerful the mind and body relationship is. There's a lot of things about the mind. I go into great details. Obviously, having a university, psychosomatic university, we spend hours going over the mind. But one of the things about the mind that is missing between conscious, subconscious, a lot of the books and a lot of the lectures we hear, is something called a critical faculty. And it might be brushed on occasionally, but it protects any perception you have. That's the biggest thing. Whenever I have a patient sit down with me and let's say they have depression or autoimmune, okay, one of the first things I tell them is, okay, they've tried everything, they've done all the physical work, they've tried changing lifestyle things, but there's still something not right, something untouched. And one of the things I have them do is look in the mirror and I say, I want you to tell yourself that, and we're going to give it a clear definition. I'm not going to say just love without giving a definition, because love can mean several different things. But so if we're going to say the word love, like if we're going to get people to love themselves, that's where it all starts getting better. They have to know what that love means. Love means only seeing the best. Only seeing the best in that person. Only seeing the best in yourself. Okay, period. So if I have a person sit down and say, I want you to look in the mirror and I want you to say, I love myself. I love life. Life's here to support me. And by the time they start to say that, they have such a discomfort arise in their body that I say, that's the problem right there. That's the problem. That's why nothing else has worked, because there's deep wounds that need to heal. Once you can begin to fully accept yourself, love yourself, and love every aspect of life, only looking for the best and pieces in life, that's when the person has a global shift. And that's when their family catches on that something's different. And that's how we shift the world. That's how we shift the world, is having people begin to see only the best in themselves and the best in other things.
You made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is brought to you by Chiro HD, Evo Creative Media, 100% Chiropractic, Chiro Health USA, Imaging Services, Chiro Moguls, New Patients in a Box, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, and the IFCO. You can benefit from our full list of sponsors by visiting our sponsor page at chirohustle.com/sponsors. Links in the description. Now let's hustle. I think that's really important. And there's an old Native American saying that is, deep in the belly of the wound is the gift.
It is tremendously. The more adverse pain that a person has suffered, the more trauma they've experienced, the higher the benefit they get when they forgive it and they bless that.
Yeah, there was a few years back, I had a really bad injury to my left leg. I didn't do anything to it, just started manifesting, and it was awful. 10 out of 10. I don't tell this story very often, but I was like incapable of walking. Awful. Suicidal thoughts. And I was going to this men's group up in Victoria, Canada, and I flew up there. I could barely walk. And one of the guys I was meeting with on a morning at a coffee shop before the whole thing started, I limped down, and he said, he laughed at me. You have to love that. You have to love it, man. And I'm like, shut up. I don't want to hear you tell me what to do. But he's like, you have to love it. He's like, whatever it's going on, You have to love that pain. And I was like, all I want to do is have it go away. And I think that that's a disconnect with a lot of people is, I've also been told that people go to comfort to die, but also people in pain go to die. So sometimes
Right.
that manifests that their comfort is their pain.
And here's why. It's because it's what is familiar. It's what matches their earliest template. What I have found as a chiropractor, what I have found to be the sole interference, and this is as a chiropractic, what we look for is removing the interference so the person can heal. And as you know, I work virtual. I work through Zoom. Um, I have found that most often cases, that interference shows up as what I've coined as called a self-mutilation program. Self-mutilation program is, again, the critical faculty. I was kind of talking about that a moment ago. Protects any perception we have, good or bad. By the time we're 5 years old, everything about ourselves, what life has to offer us, relationships, money, love, if we're accepted, if we're not accepted, all those things, if we accept ourselves, if we don't accept ourselves, are fully solidified. And after that, what's called this critical faculty forms like a titanium barrier around our perceptions. If you tell a person that has depression what a worthy, valuable person they are, you'll see that thing slam shut. The same way it slams shut if I were to tell you the grass is blue and the sky is green. You see how immediately your mind kind of shuts off. Deep down, you're like, what's he talking about? Grass is blue. All you're doing is protecting a perception that you hold. Think about how uncomfortable it feels. If I said the grass is blue and the sky is green, you feel your mind slam shut. Well, the same thing happens with a chronically ill person when you tell them same thing happened with you when that gentleman said, you got to love it. Barrier slam shut. And we have to know that part of ourself. We have to know that the freedom lies on the other end of that gate. And oftentimes, that freedom is unfamiliar. It's new territory. It's kind of frightening. It's out of the comfort zone, and so many people don't want to venture into that.
Chiropractic, let's go lightning round because I do want to touch on a couple of the topics I sent over to you. And I think we got about 10 more minutes at max with each other today. Let's talk about practice growth. What advice would you give a new grad on how to get out there and create the practice of their dreams?
First off, they need to create in their mind. They need to, because here's the thing. I'll just give you some scientific, and this is what I really wish somebody would have told me a long time ago. But I give this advice to people all the time, and it helps. You look at quantum entanglement. What that means is they successfully have split a light particle, which is what we're made of. We're made of sunlight, compressed sunlight. We're made of atoms. They actually split a particle, separate it, and whatever happened to this particle simultaneously happened to this one. So there's this field of quantum physics where entanglement is a valid discovery that they've made. So what that means is everything that you want, your success, lots of patience, helping a number of people change their lives, it exists in this realm. Now, instead of going out and trying to learn another thing and grab another machine and grab this big fancy practice, what you want to do is make sure that deep down you believe in yourself. Deep down you really believe in yourself on a very deep level. You believe in yourself. You believe you're worth it. You believe that when you picture that success in your mind, when you visualize it, for instance, it has to feel good. Having lots of money, that has to feel good. Having a parking lot full of patients eager to get in there, that has to feel good. And that's where you start. If you're looking at those things in your mind and you're imagining what it's like to hit the road and be successful and have all this success and all these patients doing great, you have to first picture it in your mind, and it has to feel good. If it doesn't feel good, I can promise you this, Doesn't matter how fancy your sign is. Doesn't matter how well people are marketing for you. It'll still find a way to. You don't match it. Like one of my mentors, Jim Rohn, said, if somebody gave you $1 million, you best become a millionaire very quickly. That means you develop the mindset very quickly. Otherwise, sure enough, like anything else, it'll all disappear. Well, it's the same with success. Develop it in your mind, in your being, in your body. Act it, feel it every day until it feels great. And everything else will take care of itself.
One of my early mentors, Fred Schofield, he would always tell me, if I took a practitioner that was seeing 500 visits a week and I put them into an office that was seeing 50, eventually that office would be at 500. He's like, but if I took a practitioner that was seeing 50 and put them in an office at 120, eventually that office would go down to 50.
That's it. That's exactly it. So that's what it all. And here's the thing: it's not the parking lot. It's not the technique. It's not how fancy his waiting room is. And although we love to say it, it's not even the lady up front. It's how that man sees himself deep down. And that's where a newly graded chiropractor, nobody's going to tell you that stuff. You might come across some people like um, your mentor Schofield that said that. I at one time was seeking coaches and mentors, and I had a woman once say, if you're not selling this product, if it's not the product that's not selling it, it's you. And that's as far as she went. It made me think. I was like, okay, great, it's me. I got it. I'm the problem, not the product. What do I do? What's next?
So you've mentioned a lot of things today when it comes to energy and mentors. Who are some of your heroes that have helped you become the practitioner you are today?
One mentor that comes to mind, and I'm going to be real specific about this, is the 50-year-old Bob Proctor, not the 80-year-old Bob Proctor. Now, Bob Proctor is no longer with us today, but he was probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, success financial advisors ever. And he taught people to really know how to understand themselves. The 55-year-old Bob Proctor was a real inspiration. He started me on this journey of understanding myself. At one point, I heard him say, if you're going to change the results in your life, like going from 50 to 120 patients or 50 to 500 patients and all that, if you're going to change the results in your life, and the results that I look for are happiness, health, and wealth, all those, you're going to have to change something about you. And in order to change you, you have to learn something about you that you don't know. And those words have made me go on this non-stop endeavor learning about myself.
On this endeavor, you got a long runway ahead of you. Where is this profession that we both love going? Chiropractic.
Well, that's a tough question because you've probably heard this. There's no enemy a chiropractor has like another chiropractor, right? You ever heard that?
Yeah, they circle the wagons and shoot in.
Right. So in order for us to stay relevant on this wave of change that's coming across, that is coming, this wave of higher consciousness that's starting to proliferate, and in order for us to be relevant, first off, we have to unite. And really what it all comes down to is not a specific technique, not energy over manual, not Atlas orthogono over activator, not this and not that, these different camps. We have to unite, and with the ultimate goal as the ultimate goal that we're all shooting for is uh, healing, whichever way possible, whatever way possible. We all need to put aside our egos and um, focus on healing, however that is, shifting the perception of a person so they can ultimately heal, because that's really what it comes down to.
So heal the healer is what I'm hearing. We need to heal the healer. And that's exactly what we've done here with Chiro Hustle. We're non-denominational. We take the mixers. We take the straights. I do obviously put a lot of my own interest into what we do. But we've turned down all, like Gorbachev and Reagan back in the day, tear down this wall. That's what we've done for chiropractic. Like, unity through diversity is something that we have embraced the whole time of 6.5 years of putting this show together. And I think that that's what makes this show so powerful and unique is we have one common thread, and that's chiropractic. But even if somebody is a rank mixer, I blow the doors open at our intro and tell them our why, and they conform without even wanting to the greater truth of this profession.
Right.
And they might have a high ticket neuropathy program. Fine. What we're going to talk about is your career in chiropractic. Who are your heroes? What is the philosophy? And I think really, if we have good leadership at the beginning, the middle, and the end, that's what it takes. And that's what it will always take. There was a young gentleman, episode 600. He actually took the last question and asked me. I said, well, we need to take our colleges back. We need to take the education back. We need to put people with integrity into leadership positions.
Right.
And if you take what you said and you mold that together and bond it together with what I just said, yes, we have to be outcome specific, but we can't be insurance whores. And we have to give people a good service and render to them a good service and take care of people individually, not as numbers. It's not a meat counter, bro. It's an individual that is coming to you because they don't know where to go or who to trust. And now they found chiropractic. So guard it well, protect the sacred trust, and deliver the damn goods. Whatever your chosen technique is, whatever school you finished up in, got your diploma at, whatever your student loan is, whatever interest rate you're paying on your mortgage, like, go and take care of the people. And I think in 20 years from now, if we do it right, man, this quantum physics stuff that you're talking about earlier, chiropractic gets really great. And it is more energetic than just a force. If you think about it, power versus force, the Hawking work, it's ascension. We want people to ascend to the highest level of themselves. And you said it, this is going to be your tag. Learn how to only see the best in yourself. So if chiropractors learned only how to see the best in their brothers and sisters, that's what we need to do. And that's where we get this thing to ascend to where there isn't a medical fascism that can push down the truth of this profession. They can infiltrate it, but we can weed them out and we can see them for who they are then. And they'll tell on themselves. Right. That's what's happening right now. The profession's telling on itself. We see who has taken the language out of the colleges. Well, let them become physiotherapy schools, okay? No big deal. Just don't call it chiropractic. We see the schools that are taking chiropractic out of the titles of their universities. Well, that's cool. They just told us who they were. We don't have to go ask what's going on or how they lost their way. We see it. It's clear. Now let's go and do the right thing with the people that are protecting chiropractic and doing it and promoting chiropractic in its honesty. Right. Let's go there. How about we do that?
Excellent.
And that's where, that question really matters. Dr. Gabe Roberts, your episode 605 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I really appreciate you being on as our guest today.
James, it was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
I know people are going to want to work with you. Where do we send them to?
Probably the best way to get a hold of me is a website, thesubconscioushhealer.com. And you can always email us, elevateyourfield@pm.me.
All right, guys. The subconscioushhealer.com. Check them out. It'll be in our show notes. elevateyourfield@pm.me. Dr. Gabe Roberts, it was a powerful conversation today here on Chiro Hustle. I really appreciate you being our guest today on episode 605. We'll have you on again.
Excellent. Sounds great, James.
I'll close out like I always do, telling you all you're just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.